Hey, welcome to another episode of the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast. We're coming at you today with just me. I got some information that I want to share with you. Just some background that I want to share with you. But first, I asked my listeners a question. I asked them about the happy house, happy spouse, or the happy wife, happy life situation. And of course, majority of my Kingdom Wife Mom bosses are beautiful Kingdom Wife Mom bosses, and they chose happy house, happy spouse, of course. And so the question that I asked was, what are some things that you do to ensure that you are not that you are the sole person to make your husband happy, but what are some things that you do to ensure that you're having peace in your home and that you are contributing to your husband's happiness or his joy on a day-to-day basis? And I love one of the answers that I got. I wanted to share with you. And the answer says that it was actually quite funny. She said that she gives him snacks when he goes off to work, that he loves that, and she showers him with words of affirmation. And another answer that I got said, I learned something called the right versus responsibility. I have no clue what this is. I told her I wanted to talk to her a little bit more about it. But she said, rights versus responsibility. It is our right to get XYZ treatment as wives, yet God looks at the responsibility. How are you taking care of your husband, regardless of what you get or don't get in return? Then, how are you giving yourself the things that are lacking? Win win. I love that perspective for the most part. Like I said, I don't really know the full details of it, but definitely, how are you treating your husband? Even when you are not getting what you want from the marriage, even when things are not looking the way that you think they should look. And so, in the Fortified Wife Challenge that I did last year, one of the things that I had the wives do was to write a love letter to your husband. And the responses that we got from that were actually really amazing. The husbands really appreciated it. It was a surprise. It was something that they didn't expect. And even in my own marriage, like I wrote my husband a letter during that time, and he loved the letter. It brought all of the feels, all of the emotions. And so that is something that I encourage for you to do if you've never done that before. Write a love letter to your husband, and just in that letter, just give him adoration and just respect, and just let him know how much you appreciate him, how much you love him. It can rekindle some things. Um, it can rekindle some love. It can just take you guys to another place of intimacy. So I definitely encourage you to do that. But speaking of the Fortified Wife Challenge, that is what we're talking about today. And so in the Fortified Wife Challenge, we had four cohorts last year. And starting on today, we're making this an independent thing where you can just work through the Fortified Wife Challenge on your own. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Fortified Wife Challenge and what it is about, what it is to be a fortified wife. So I remember asking some ladies when I said fortified wife, what were they thinking? And some of the answers that came up was someone who has it all together, someone who knows who she is and knows what she's doing. And while I love those answers, um, and I guess in some degree they would be somewhat true, but for the Fortified Wife Challenge, when we're talking about the fortified wife, we are talking about someone who maybe is in a marriage that they necessarily don't feel happy in or don't necessarily want to be in. Maybe they see the enemy coming up against their kingdom marriage. Maybe they see the enemy trying to destroy their union that God has put together. And God is telling them that they need to strap up and defeat the enemy in their kingdom marriage. And if I can be entirely honest with you, I'll share with you a little bit about my life and how I had to become a fortified wife. I won't share everything, but I will share a lot with you about that. And so a few years back, like the enemy was hardcore in my kingdom marriage, like hardcore in my kingdom marriage. And we were so oblivious to it. And believe that the oblivion came from pride. Like we didn't want to see it. We didn't want to submit to humility. And we both had built up pride of frustration, pride of just being discontent in the marriage. And nobody wanted to drop their pride. And so, I mean, like it got bad. Like I was ready to walk away. My husband was frustrated. Like it was a lot going on in that season. And I know that some of you guys have heard me share this story before, but since God gave, like when me and my husband got together, I went to God and I said, God, you know what? If this is somebody that you want me to be with, like I need you to do this because it was really hard for me to walk away. And in that moment, God began to shift some things in the relationship. And I knew that this was where he wanted me to be. This was the marriage that he wanted me to be in. And so when things got hard in the marriage, when things got rocky in the marriage, it was easy to go to God and say, you know what, God, this is where you told me to be, but this is not looking like it should look. Like I need your help. It was easy to trust him in that situation because I had already trusted him to lead me into the situation. And I knew that he wasn't going to leave me in the situation without help and without instruction. So before I walked away from what I knew God had called me to do, I decided that I was going to go to God and ask God if this was okay. Like, can we take a break? Can we separate? Like, what can we do right now in this moment? And God said to me, like when I said to him that I was ready, like I was done. And he said, you hadn't even tried. And I sat with it for a little bit and I processed it. And he was absolutely right. Like I hadn't even tried. And I'm going to tell you why I hadn't tried. I, I believe I tried. And when I didn't see the return back that I wanted to see, I stopped trying. Like I did the basics. And this, I feel like when I tell this story, it sounds like we were just like miserable, but we weren't. Like we were basic living. I think it was Chantel that got on here and was talking about how with partners they discovered a new level of intimacy. Like they discovered what their marriage is really supposed to look like and what their marriage is really supposed to be like. And she was like, you don't know if you don't know. I knew that it wasn't what I felt like it should be like, right? I mean, like we were basic. We were living, we were doing what we were supposed to do, but it was real basic and it was not what I desired for my marriage. And so when I didn't see the return, I stopped putting my best foot forward. Like I stopped putting my best foot forward. And the thing about Fortified Wife that I feel like is triggering is because it's about me and it's about you as a kingdom wife. It's not about your husband and his shortcomings and his lack and what he's doing. But in that moment, I realized that if my marriage was going to come to a divorce, if my marriage was going to come to an end, then I needed to be able to stand before God and say that I did everything that I was supposed to do. I did everything that you told me to do. And in that moment where God was reminding me that I hadn't even tried, I realized I hadn't. I stopped trying. And we all know that we have to stand before God ourselves. And when we stand before God, our excuse cannot be that somebody else didn't do it, so I didn't do it. Right? Because God called for us to be the examples. He called for us to be the light. And so, in that moment of realizing that I stopped walking the assignment with purpose, I stopped walking the assignment with grace. In that moment of realizing that, I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I have to change. I have to shift. I have to do something different to make sure that I am in right standing and in alignment with what it is that God has called for me to do. And in that moment, I had to start the warfare journey of it was a really rough year. It was a really rough year. It was a really hard year. Um, but the warfare journey had to start with me. And I had to change my mindset. I had to change my perspective. I had to change my thoughts. And I had to look to God and I had to work as unto the Lord. I couldn't walk this assignment like I was like doing it for my husband. Because if I was doing it that way, I would fail. Like I would immediately fail. Why? Because I was looking to him to live up to an expectation that was unrealistic for him in the moment. Right. And so I had to look to God and be like, God, listen, I need you to help me walk this assignment. I need you to tell me what to do. And I need you to tell me how to show up. And so, God began to reveal to me the enemy. He began to reveal to me the tactics, the schemes, the plans, and the seeds of the enemy in my home that I had been blind to. Mind you, not like I'm not blind to God. Like I'm not blind to God. I pray, I fast, I do all of these things. But in this area, I had a blinder of pride on because out of frustration, I just shut it down and I didn't want to deal with it. And in that moment, pride crept in. And so I had a blinder to it. I didn't want to see what was going on. I didn't care what was going on. I was just ready to be out, right? And so God had to take those blinders off and he had to reveal to me the areas of my marriage and in my home where the enemy was gaining territory. This is a territory situation. The enemy wants to have dominion over our marriages. And so in that moment, he wanted to have dominion over my kingdom marriage. He wanted to be the one to rule over my marriage. And we know when the enemy rules, it's just going to end up in divorce. It's going to end up in hurt, it's going to end up in trauma, it's going to end up in pain, it's going to end up in all of these things. And so, where the enemy was gaining territory, God had to tell me to strap up and go get my territory back. He had to tell me to strap up and come up against the enemy that was trying to rule in my kingdom marriage. And I believe it was Kenyon that was talking about Abigail. And as she was talking about Abigail, it reminded me of that time because my husband was like oblivious to it. Like he was completely oblivious to it. And what Abigail did when she went down in that valley to stop David from bringing destruction on her home, she was the wife that interceded. And she didn't go to her husband and fuss at her husband and say, "You lazy bum, what are you doing? Like, get down there and do what you're supposed to do." She went before the king and she interceded for her household. And for me in that situation, I had to go before the king and intercede for my household. I had to, when I say like strap up and come up against the enemy, I'm talking about being woke up in the middle of the night and God telling me what I need to pray for, or God telling me what I need to decree over my home, or God telling me what to speak into existence over my home. That was when victory laps became the major thing for us. That is when victory laps became something that had to be done every single day. But victory laps had to be done every single day. Every single day I walked over my home and I decreed the victory of God. Every single day I walked over my home and I decreed that God had dominion over my home and that the enemy cannot rule in my home. Where we decree the victory of God is the place that the enemy is defeated because the enemy could not get the victory over God. And so I was just decreeing over my home that the enemy was defeated. And I was going before the Lord and I was interceding for my home and I was interceding for my husband. And that is just the season that the fortified wife had to be built. That is the season that I had to realize that praying these average prayers, praying these, and I say this all the time, right? Some of these marriages are perfect, like they have no issues, they have no like deep rooted anything going on. And I think that is absolutely amazing. And I thank God for those kingdom marriages. But there are a lot of women out here who are struggling in their kingdom marriage. There are a lot of women out here who are ready to walk away from their kingdom marriage. But if you're anything like me, in the season where I wanted to walk away from my kingdom marriage and God told me no. He said, no, you're not walking away from this. This is not what I assigned for you in this season. You like he basically told me I couldn't walk away. And so, because I fear the Lord, because I trust God, because I want to live my life in a way that is pleasing to Him, and I know what He says in Jeremiah 29 when He says, "For I know the plans that I have for you," and I have to trust in that, right? I have to trust in the plans that He has for me. I had to strap up. And so, in the Fortified Wife Challenge, I feel like it's a little triggering for people because it doesn't deal with your husband. And I know in a lot of these situations, I'm just going to be so honest, like in a lot of these situations, wives feel like their husbands are the problem. Like their husbands are what the issue is. That's like it was how I felt. But honestly, I mean, like I had my own issues too. Like he had issues with me, and then of course I had issues with him. But in a lot of these situations, we feel like our husbands are the issue and we feel like they don't see it or we feel like they don't care. And girl, you cannot change your husband. You don't have the power, you don't have the authority to change your husband. You can intercede for your husband. You can decree over your husband. You can pray some things off of your husband, but you cannot change your husband. Only God has the power and the authority to do that. And so I feel like the Fortified Wife Challenge is hard because it deals with me, it deals with you as a kingdom wife. It deals with our areas of weakness. It deals with our unforgiveness. It deals with our necessity to go deeper in the word. It deals with our necessity to realize the truth of what God has spoken to us and what he has decreed over our kingdom marriage. And man, it requires such a level of humility because there will be times that I would be praying over my marriage and praying over my husband. And I mean, like, I could see his pride rise up in something he said or something he did. I could see his pride rise up. And naturally, so real naturally, so real carnal, so my pride would want to rise up too. Like, baby, don't forget. Don't forget, like I can have a smart mouth too. I can go out too. I can cause some frustration too. I can cause some stuff in this house too, right? That sometimes that's the thought that wants to creep up in our head. But before I respond, I breathe. Before I respond, I process because I guarantee you sometimes your immediate response is going to be a triggered response. It's going to be a response of anger. It's going to be a response of frustration. It's going to be a response of let's fight, right? If it's hopefully you're not physically fighting. Um, but in argument in conversation, it's going to be a let's fight. So I try to process before I respond, and I remind myself of the fact that I am working as unto the Lord. I am not working as unto my husband. I honor my husband. Let's talk about honor. How do you honor your husband? I listen, the book will be coming out. I promise you, it'll be coming out soon. But in that book, I talk about my smart behind mouth and how I used to dishonor my husband with like the things that I would say. And I said in that book, like, listen, I don't know where we was going with this. Like once my mouth opened, I didn't know where we was going. We was gonna both land there together. And I feel like my mouth has been one of the most dishonoring things in my relationship with my husband. It has been the most dishonoring thing for our relationship and our marriage. And I remember getting to a point where I was like, girl, you gotta stop because it was bad. And so, how do you honor your husband? Like, how do you honor your husband? How do you dishonor your husband? That's a good question. I want you guys to share that with me in the comments, certain ways that you do that. But anyways, I had to work as unto the Lord and make sure that I honored my husband, right? And so that requires a level of humility. And a lot of women are so hurt. A lot of women are so frustrated and in a place of trauma, that humility is hard. And not humility because of pride, but humility because of offense, humility because of rejection, humility because they feel like that they have to defend themselves from every word in every situation. And whenever we have an unhealed mindset, it does cause a level of pride. It causes a level of disunity and dysfunction and disconnection. And so the Fortified Wife Challenge also talks about being healed. And it's, listen, I am not a therapist. I am not a mental health counselor. I've been to counseling. I've been to counseling. I know that there is such a stigmatism on the Black community in counseling, but y'all tripping. If you need counseling, you better go to counseling. And I have to tell you, if you have a level of hurt and a level of trauma that you need to be healed from, you need to go to counseling. The Fortified Wife Challenge may not be for you yet. I do understand that the Fortified Wife Challenge is not for everyone because everyone is not able to deal with themselves right now, as far as like putting their pride down and picking up humility, or picking up your crosses and laying down your own self-will. Like, everybody can't deal with themselves in that way right now. And I get it. No judgment. I entirely get it. But go to counseling if you need counseling. I don't like I've been to counseling. I've thought about going back. This week, or this month, in the month of February, was 1 year ago. My mother passed away and I did not suspect it. And I think I was oblivious. I was oblivious. I was definitely oblivious to the fact that God was not going to heal my mother. And baby, that's a different podcast episode for a different day. Because that's the that one was a deep one. That one definitely rocked my world, is what I can say. In addition to all of the years of the previous situations that had happened with my marriage or on my job or whatever, it was just an incredibly world changing situation. And so in the month of February, this is the first year. Y'all keep me in your prayers because I'm going to be dealing with that. But I just wanted to get on here and talk to you guys about the Fortified Wife Challenge. That's going to be just the episode for today, is me talking about that with you and sharing that with you, because I want to know, out of my Kingdom Wife Mom bosses, man, we have so much on the plate. And we talked about this with everything. Like, even from the very first podcast episode, we talked about that with Katrina Garrett, when she was talking about the situations and the struggles that we face in marriage and the growth that we have to come to in our kingdom marriages. And me and my husband started dating at 19. Like, we've been together, what year is this? We've been together for 22 years. We haven't been married for 22 years, but we've been together for 22 years. And so all through our 20s and all through our 30s, like, we've grown together. And sometimes in your 20s and your 30s, you realize things that you like and you realize things that you don't like. And so sometimes it causes people to grow apart. Sometimes it causes people to, in their marriage, on irreconcilable differences. It causes a lot of situations whenever you're not in tune and in step in your growth, especially your spiritual growth. We're unequally yoked couples. It's hard. I'm not gonna, like, me and my husband are very much unequally yoked, spiritually. And what I mean by that is like, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we're just at two totally, completely different levels and completely different desires as far as like what we want in the kingdom. And the desire is God on both sides, but because we are on two totally like separate pages of our growth walk, my desire is a little bit like I want to see something a little more different, and he wants to see something a little more different. And if I can just be incredibly honest right now, like that is something that we are needing to work on getting congruent in, is making sure that we are um, spiritually aligned to desire the same thing for our household and for our kingdom marriage, and that we are both aligned with what it is that God is speaking to us as a wife, as a husband, as a mother, and as a father, to make sure that the flow and the function of our home stays in the will of God. And I know a lot of women who struggle with that. And my husband always talks about that. It's actually very true. Like in the churches, you see a lot of women. You don't see as many men. I'm not gonna say men don't go to church. Please do not misquote me on that. Men definitely go to church, but you see a lot of women. You don't always see as many men in the church. And I don't know why that is. I really don't know why that is. But I know that it contributes to a lot of households being unequally yoked spiritually. And that can be a frustrating place because while I am being woken up at 3 and 4 in the morning because God is like, hey, I need you to pray for this, and I need you to pray against this, and I need you to pray to this, like my husband is just completely oblivious to the fact that I am having to spiritually war against certain things that are trying to take dominion in our marriage or take dominion in our home. God gives you those revelations, and He gives you those moments of wisdom and of knowledge to know that you have to get up and you have to combat the enemy. And being a fortified wife is that it is knowing the weapons of your warfare. It is having the relationship with God to be able to get the revelation to the battle that you are being called to. It is knowing that the battle is already won. It is knowing that you have power and you have authority to defeat the enemy that is trying to take over in your kingdom marriage. That is what being a fortified wife is about. It is not about perfection. It is not about having it all put together. It is not about any of those things. It is about being able to withstand the tactics of the enemy. It is being able to destroy the works of the enemy. It is being built up to last and to endure so that the enemy does not come into your marriage or come into your home or come into your finances or come onto your job and wreak havoc and have his way with no response. Like that he don't come to you and say that he's starting a fight and you don't know how to fight back. That's what the Fortified Wife Challenge is about. That's what being a fortified wife is about. And I just wanted to come on and share with you guys today. I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. You can send me messages on topics that you would like to see on the Fortified Wife Challenge. I have a lot of ladies lined up that I am wanting to come onto the show and just kind of share those nuggets with us and share that wisdom with us, so that we can be equipped, so that we can be in unity and grow in strength and grow in unity in our kingdom marriages, and that we can defeat the enemy, right? All right, that's what it's about. So I am going to catch you guys on the next episode, and I thank you so much for joining me, and I will talk to you later. Bye.